Welcome, my friends, to this Father's Day edition of More Bad News, brought to you as always by Camel Cigarettes. Take the Camels Challenge. Smoke Camels for 30 days and see for yourself what a difference Camels can make in your life. And remember, Camels makes the perfect Father's Day gift. Yes, give him a carton of Camels and see what Camels can do for your dad. Well, my friends, it's been another week of very bad news, but I thought I would start with a few thoughts about Father's Day. When my son was in the 5th grade, his best friend was Michael, and one day Michael's mom called to ask if I was willing to be Santa's helper as part of the school Christmas program. I was surprised, and I said, Janice, you know I'm Jewish. Why would you ask me? And there was this pause, after which she said, you mean you don't believe in Jesus? No, Janice, I don't believe in Jesus. It was a revelation to her. But that did it. I went to see the principal of the elementary school, Mrs. Borth, and I told her that it's too much. The entire month of December, the school is all decked out for Christmas. My son comes home with handmade Christmas ornaments. They sing Christmas carols in music. And as if that weren't enough, they have to set up a secret Santa shop so that the kids can shop in school because there's not enough opportunity to shop outside. It just seemed to me a bit much. After listening to my complaints, Mrs. Borth told me, Mr. Mehler, you have nothing to worry about. We never mention Jesus. My reply was, I wish you would. You mean to tell me that all you're doing here is just celebrating a national holiday with no religious significance? Yes, she said, that's what we're doing here. So that was it. I went to see Sister Ann, the principal of St. Mary's Catholic School. And after a long conversation with her, during which I was impressed with her understanding of Judaism and her willingness to respect my son's religious traditions, I decided to send Isaac to the Catholic school. At the Catholic school, Christmas was all about Jesus and all about giving. Instead of Santa's secret workshop, they collected gifts for the women's shelter, and nobody got any presents. And Christmas was not about getting presents. It was all about Jesus and about giving. My cousin shook his head and said, Barry, they're going to make him into a Catholic. And Isaac hated Catholic school as much as he hated public school, and they barely had any influence on him. So when it comes to being a human person, I find that it helps to have a couple of people who love you enough to put up with your personality and tolerate your habits and quirks. And Isaac is willing to schlep heavy objects for me and repair things that get broken without charge. For me, makes me a happy dad. But since the parochial school, was small and it was very informal, they were amazingly comfortable with my coming in and sitting down in the back of the classroom and watching things go. So the first thing I noticed was that the children were genuinely terrified of Sister Ann. That she would walk into the yard when the children were all screaming and making everybody quieted down. And when she said line up, they all lined up and then she'd walk into the classroom holding a sneaker and she would say, who does this belong to? The custodian is not here to pick up after you children. That will be 25 cents. And she's collecting 25 cents here and 25 cents there. And so Isaac raises his hand. He says, excuse me, Sister Ann, but where does all that money go for? She told him it was none of his business, and she sent him to the office for insubordination. But then one day Isaac came home after Officer Smith had come to the school to introduce the DARE program. You may remember the drug abuse resistance education. It was all the rage back in the day. So Isaac and I sat through the DARE program, and I published an article, One Parent's Perspective on DARE, and I'll put the URL in the link in the description box. In the essay I wrote, in his introductory lecture, Officer Smith wore his gun and pepper gas. He explained that he would not wear them again, but on the first day he does, to satisfy their curiosity, he later explained to me. My son Isaac came home with vivid stories of what would happen if a person was shot. The first thing he talked about was his gun, and he explained that when people get shot, they can't get up anymore because of the pain. He explained about his gun, and he started to explain about his pepper spray and how it inflicts pain on a person's eyes and can shoot 30 feet. He took out his handcuffs and he handcuffed Steve to Mary, and he left him handcuffed the entire hour. My son had obviously learned a great deal that day, and the lessons clearly had an impact on him. He hardly ever told me what happened at school. He usually said nothing special. But on this day, he had learned the power of the police to seize and kill and gas. And at a later class, Officer Smith told us the funny story about when he cuffed a boy and a girl with two Michigan State sweatshirts on, and at the end of the class, uh, he realized he didn't have his key. And he had to call, get a dispatch, send somebody over with a key, and that was a funny story. I concluded, our Constitution explicitly forbids officers of the law to search and seize any person without probable cause that some crime has been committed. In fact, the Fourth Amendment that guarantees us this right speaks of the right of people to be secure in their person against unreasonable seizure. Handcuffs are not given to police officers as instructional aids. The authors of the Constitution understood that any person authorized by the state to carry a gun and other weapons had to be constrained, not by legislative act, but as a part of our most fundamental constitutional rights. We call it the Bill of Rights, and it is widely understood to be of utmost importance. It was written to protect the citizens from the power of the government. And that is what makes America special. Our Constitution is intended to protect the citizens from the government. The DARE program thus began with an abuse of police power and a violation of our most fundamental freedoms. So I wanted to say something about the AMOC and the coming elections. The AMOC is the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Current. It's this massive current that maintains the seasons, the temperature of the planet. The northern hemisphere is considerably warmer than the southern because of the AMOC. And there was this movie that, the day after, which it suddenly stopped and then everything turned frozen. It's a kind of crazy movie, but the idea is true. If the AMOC stops, then there'll be a radical change globally, and it'll be catastrophic. And we know now for sure that it is going to stop. It's been slowing down for decades. We're not sure how long it'll last, but the scientists who are in the know are anxious, nervous. They have anxiety. The same kind of anxiety we have about Trump and our future. But that's my point. Trump is the future. Whether he wins or lose, Trumpism is the future. If Trump begins to speak in tongues, the evangelicals will translate. We know that we're not going to wise up. We're not going to learn the lessons of climate change. The book that changed my mind, The Collapse of Western Civilization, written in 2012. The first chapter was on the realization of what we were doing to ourselves. And the second chapter was the frenzy of fossil fuel consumption. That was the title of the second section, the frenzy of fossil fuel consumption. The idea being that once we discovered that fossil fuels were killing us, we went into a frenzy of destructive fossil fuel consumption, and that frenzy has simply gotten worse. The United States today is the world's leading producer of fossil fuels. We are the leading producer of military hardware. We are the most privileged nation in the American empire, and we are being sustained by our gluttony. Imagine hyenas feasting on a carcass. That is what we are. Naturally, we're drawn to Trump and his voracious appetite and his voracious narcissism. The 20th century began with World War I. Before World War I, what you had were empires from the 19th century. The Russian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And World War I ended all that, and what you had was the Soviet Union and the Middle East, and you had Poland and Czechoslovakia. You had a world that was the 20th century. And that so World War I led to the Great Depression, which led to World War II, which led to the Cold War and the collapse of communism. We're now in the American century, facing a climate crisis and extinction. Is Biden going to stem that tide, turn things around? our destiny is sealed as far as that's concerned. No election is going to change the direction that we're going in. Let's hope that uh, Biden, the center holds in America. It gives a little bit more time. But my advice is to get your affairs in order uh, and make the most of what you have. With that, I'll leave you this week. Another week of bad news. I'll be back next week with more bad news. Take care, keep your head low, and stay safe.